The greatest mysteries of humanity, inexplicable events, places shrouded in legend, and superhuman heroes.
Many people don't want to believe in a world without miracles because this means that it's a world without soul.
They are the mysterious legacy of ancient cultures.
Myths come from an oral tradition, which means that each retelling is different. The heroic become more heroic, and the power becomes more powerful.
Researchers around the globe are working hard to get to the bottom of these myths.
One thing is certain, so advanced is modern historical research and modern archaeology. We just need to keep looking and to keep digging.
One culture that has provided ample material for myths is the old Egyptian civilization. Powerful pharaohs ruled the country for over 3,000 years. They were worshipped as gods by their loyal subjects. One such pharaoh is particularly mysterious, Tutankhamun, the king with the golden mask. The Valley of the Kings, 1922. Archaeologist Howard Carter conducts large excavation works. He's looking for treasures, gold, grave offerings, and mummies. After years of searching, he finally gets lucky. One of his workers comes across a secret cavity with a stairway. Right away, Carter sends a telegram to his sponsor, Lord Carnarvon. At last have made wonderful discovery in valley. Stop. A magnificent tomb with seals intact. Stop. Recovered same for your arrival. Stop. Carter. 2 weeks later, Lord Carnarvon travels to the Valley of the Kings. It will be his last journey. Carnarvon and Carter are looking at one of the greatest archaeological finds ever. But soon, inexplicable events start to unfold. With every piece they take out of the pharaoh's vault, the Golden King's anger appears to increase. The first casualty shakes the excavation team. Lord Carnarvon, the financier, dies. The world press reports the second sensation within a short time. First, the discovery of the tomb, and now the deadly curse of the pharaoh.
The curse gave the press a juicy story. It led to serious mystery, which excited not just the journalists, but their audiences. Now, if you want a story to be well known, make it a secret.
17 people die, allegedly from the curse of the pharaoh. Among the dead is Arthur Mace, Carter's right hand. Is the tomb really the cause of all these deaths? Does the ancient corpse have sinister powers that haunt us in the present?
The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb unleashed the curse. The facts surrounding the tomb are somewhat obscure. The young king was very mysterious. He took the throne when he was 8 or 9 years old and died at 18 or 19.
Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten, a revolutionary pharaoh. He and his spouse Nefertiti were to be treated like gods. After Akhenaten's death, he was succeeded by his young son Tutankhamun. 10 years later, he is also dead.
Tutankhamun completely disappeared from the history books after his death. So without finding his tomb, we'd probably still not know about this pharaoh to this very day.
The Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Valuable artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb are on display here. Some are particularly impressive, like these large wooden shrines that Carter found in the vault.
This shrine was located within the 3 other shrines behind a wall in the tomb. Inside, they found 4 sarcophagi placed one inside the other, just like the Russian Matryoshka dolls, where the dolls are placed one inside another. The same principle was applied here. 4 large rooms, one built into the next, home to those 4 sarcophagi. The last one contained the 4 coffins and was in the shrine back there. Come on, I'll show you. This shrine was inside this one. which was inside that one. And this last shrine is the largest. It contained all the others.
Carter has to take apart the shrines inside the small tomb. They were just too large, all tightly placed into one another, barely an inch apart. Carter needs to build special tools not to destroy the wooden coffins or the intarsia. Finally, it emerges, the golden mask and the mummy. But because resin was used to embalm the mummy, the mask stuck to the body. Carter finally just rips the golden mask off Tutankhamun's face. The Zurich Institute of Evolutionary Medicine. Professor Rulli has examined Tutankhamun's corpse several times.
Howard Carter cut off its entire head, damaging it in the process.
Howard Carter disassembled the mummy into individual parts. He thought this was the best way to display the treasures.
Some of the parts that were severed have been put back together, so the damage is only visible to a certain extent. They wanted to make it look like they left the body more or less intact to future generations.
Time and again, scientists have tried to examine the pharaoh. Why did he have to die so young? Based on their research, experts agree that Tutankhamun died when he was around 19 years old, and there were no signs that he was murdered. So why did he die?
There are various theories saying he was run over by a chariot and got injured in the process. Based on current findings, however, I believe most of these injuries are unfortunately the result of handling that took place in the 1920s, but we are unable to prove that.
State-of-the-art methods and DNA analysis reveal sobering facts about the young king, who history had almost forgotten about. The beautiful golden mask hides a deformed face marked by disease. Tutankhamun's body shows clear signs of incest. The young pharaoh was probably ill from birth. He had a club foot. This would explain why archaeologists found around 130 walking canes in his tomb. In addition, he had an acute malaria infection. This mixture of disease, genetic defects, and a potential accident may have led to his premature death.
Tutankhamun's story is so fascinating to us for several reasons. Partly because he was such an incredibly young king who died at a very young age, but also because we are fascinated by Egyptian life, by this amazing civilization that existed thousands of years ago and has practically disappeared into the dust. We love to hear these magical stories of kings and their adventures and associate that with the curse, and you have an amazing story to hand down the generations.
But what about the mysterious deaths? In fact, the discoverers of the burial chamber died much less spectacularly than long thought. The majority died of natural causes. The curse of the pharaoh. No magic power, but rather a successful PR stunt. Humans have always sought explanations for catastrophes and great misfortunes, and they often find them in myths. Some of the oldest myths of humanity were written down to teach people a lesson. In the 4th century BC, Greek philosopher Plato describes Atlantis as a splendid island nation whose residents were doomed. Was there actually such a civilization that was completely wiped out? What is the myth of the Lost Island Kingdom really trying to tell us? Atlantis, the magnificent island nation. It is said to have consisted of several rings, at its heart, Poseidon's temple. It was home to the most advanced culture of its time. But the Atlanteans were also arrogant, so the gods decided to punish them. Atlantis was completely annihilated in a dramatic catastrophe.
The myth of Atlantis is important to us today because it's the story of a once highly developed culture which was lost, which has utterly disappeared. It's a story of hubris, it's a story of punishment, and in the modern world in which we think we know so much, we celebrate our achievements, well, it serves as a pretty powerful warning.
We can read about the legend in Plato's work. In 360 BC, he describes Atlantis as a splendid island nation which had ruled over the entire Mediterranean region 9,000 years earlier, with untold wealth and unparalleled power. The story about the end of this civilization has enthralled generations worldwide. To this day, many people are not only looking for the location, but also the superhuman power that Atlantis is said to emit. SS Chief Heinrich Himmler spent large sums trying to prove that the Teutons descended from the Atlanteans. He hoped archaeologists would find evidence of ancient Aryans in Atlantis. Their search took them as far as Tibet, but they left empty-handed. The search for Atlantis is also fueled by the discovery of another city. Troy was long thought to be a myth described in the Iliad by the Greek poet Homer. In 1870, Heinrich Schliemann finds the ancient city in today's Turkey. Can Atlantis be found too?
We have so many stories about Atlantis. It is a magical undersea world. And if you were the archaeologist to discover that, like the discovery of Troy, you would go down in history.
But is there any truth to the myth? Did Atlantis really exist? If it did, are there any traces? Greece, the island of Santorini. This might have been the location of Atlantis. Its ring-like structure is the result of volcanic activity that has shaped the local landscape for thousands of years. Geologist Evinomiko is familiar with the stories about Atlantis. The island attracts myths like a magnet.
Before 3,600 years, at this place, there was a small island with the same geometry, with the same composition, lava composition, and at the top of this volcano, a city was built on.
Santorini is located on an ancient volcano. When it erupted thousands of years ago, it wreaked havoc. The crater became clogged with boulders and eventually exploded. A natural catastrophe, just like Plato describes. Scientists are looking for evidence in the sea surrounding the crater. Using state-of-the-art technology, they're examining the volcanic rocks underwater.
This is a small robot. This is a small ROV. We call it as Jason. And we will explore the seafloor very close near Kameni just to see the morphology of the lava that is cooling down on the seafloor. Okay.
8 engines and 3 cameras. The robot replaces the divers and provides high-resolution images. It passes by lava solidified a long time ago. Just like the islands themselves, the volcanic eruption shaped the sea floor around it. And at last, a discovery.
6 meters?
Underwater stairs. Could they belong to a former harbor? An entrance to the city of Atlantis? Evinomiko is one step closer to finding Atlantis. But she will need to conduct more dives to find out whether these steps are man-made or a product of nature.
I believe that there was a magic city just in the middle of the caldera, and that city has been destroyed completely. But we need to search more and explore more. And when we find some evidence from the seafloor, not something that we will find on land, then I will be completely sure that Santorini was Atlantis.
But something doesn't add up in the Santorini theory. According to Plato, Atlantis is located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, behind Gibraltar. US researcher Richard Freund is convinced that he will be able to unearth Atlantis in this region. Following Plato's descriptions, he's got his eyes set on southern Spain. His search takes him to the Doñana National Park. He believes today's dunes cover the once important harbor and the ring-shaped islands. He suspects the coastline has shifted over the centuries.
We are at ground zero for Atlantis.
Freund visits a 1920s excavation site. The dig was never finished. Today, the park is protected. It is impossible to conduct new excavations. A rock formation is sticking out of the ground, maybe a wall.
We're going to measure this edge, and then I want to just measure this edge. This is a right angle. There are no right angles in nature. This is something that was man-made.
If his theory is correct, this wall might have once belonged to the powerful city of Atlantis.
There should be no major stone like that in this entire area. And yet it's there.
But so far, there's no evidence corroborating Freud's theories. Maybe Atlantis will be discovered one day. Until then, it remains the great myth of a lost civilization. Myths often go hand in hand with faith. The greatest legends, therefore, often have a religious motivation, like the famous Grail relic that is inextricably linked to Jesus and the idea of redemption and eternal life. Did the Holy Grail really exist? The eve of the crucifixion. According to the Bible, Jesus handed his disciples a cup of wine, saying, "This is my blood." He promises to remain present in bread and wine. Those who drink from the cup are part of this community and can hope for a life after death.
The Holy Grail is like a condensed conduit for the power of creation, which can be used to heal, to restore sanity. It comes in the form of a cornucopia, which delivers the sustenance of life and the womb from which life comes. You name it. The Grail, in its essence, represents the source of creation itself.
The chalice is lost for centuries. In medieval times, however, the Crusaders revived the legend. They want to conquer the Holy Land and bring all the relics back to Europe. Vessels that prompt speculation surface time and time again. Which goblet is the real Holy Grail? Bowls made of wood or of precious stone? The Nazis are looking for the Grail as well. Himmler, head of the SS, is obsessed with occult Germanic rites. The mass murderer firmly believes that he who has the Grail will be invincible. But his search comes up short.
All sorts of people throughout history have been hunting for the Grail because it's such a mysterious object. If you were the people who could actually find it after centuries of being lost, then you prove that you've got the power, you've got the legitimacy, that you were destined to own it. And that's exactly why Hitler and why Himmler searched for the Grail during the Second World War. It would prove that they had a right to be doing what they were doing.
Valencia Cathedral has been the home of the Santo Cáliz for centuries. Believers think it is the cup Jesus Christ held in his hands. But is this the true Holy Grail? Many details support the theory that the richly ornamented chalice could be the Grail. Examinations have shown it was made about 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. But is that enough to prove its authenticity? According to one widespread hypothesis, the cup came to Rome at some point during the 1st century. There, an early and persecuted Christian community might have hidden it, maybe in the catacombs beneath the metropolis. And indeed, the catacombs of Rome show a cup resembling the Valentinian chalice. The first popes used its cup to celebrate Holy Mass in the underground. It's the era of Christian persecution. However, the subsequent path of the chalice remains unclear at first, until an ancient Latin text offers a clue. It says Jesus used "Hunc preclarum calicem," this precious chalice. They probably meant the Santo Cáliz. For 20 years, Michael Hesselmann has been looking for evidence. His key to the Grail, the medieval verse romance Percival, written by Wolfram von Eschenbach. The protagonist allegedly saw the Grail with his own eyes.
Percival is a real treasure map. You just have to follow it and you will find the Grail.
Hesemann stumbles across a suspicious location in the text. The castle where the Grail is kept is referred to as Mont Sauvage. Michael Hesemann sets out to find this legendary castle in Spain. His quest for the Grail takes him to the Spanish Pyrenees. In his theory, the Grail was taken from Jerusalem to Rome after Jesus' death, and later brought to Spain by St. Lawrence, a 3rd century deacon.
We can see the Mont Salvatoris here, the Pico de San Salvador. In the local Occitan language spoken in Aragon at the time, it was called Mont Salvage, and later this became the name of the Castle of the Grail in Percival.
The text comes with directions. At the foot of that mountain, turn right. At the end of the path lies an ancient building hidden under a ledge, the monastery of San Juan de la Peña. If the Grail had been here, there could still be traces of it today. Michael Hesemann wants to take a closer look at the monastic maze. The heroic epic provides an exact account of the rooms where Percival sees the Grail.
In the middle, he saw 4 pillars, and in between, a giant fire was ablaze. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4 large pillars here, and 1, 2, 3 spaces in between where the braziers were placed.
There is some evidence that Michael Hesemann is right and that there was a cup that was worshipped here in the Middle Ages. But is it the one that's in Valencia today? Spain isn't the only place where legends about the Grail circulate. Many believe the Grail was hidden in Glastonbury in the southwest of England in the 1st century. After Jesus died, an old legend of the Grail suggests Joseph of Arimathea collected his blood in a cup and brought it to England. He is said to have eventually hidden it in Glastonbury, the place where one of the most influential monasteries of the Middle Ages was erected, Glastonbury Abbey. A painting in the chapel of the Abbey tells how Joseph of Arimathea traveled to England with the Grail, but it has never been found. Another legend revolves around King Arthur, who is said to have been buried on an island called Avalon. Some believe Avalon and Glastonbury are the same place. The legends of Arthur and his round table are inextricably linked to the Holy Grail. Finding it is the top mission of the Noble Order of Knights.
The myth of Arthur being linked with the Holy Grail is a very important part of the Arthur story because it makes him more powerful. It gives him the divine anointment he needs to make him into a true legend which can withstand the years.
The only thing that we can be sure of regarding the Holy Grail is that knowing and believing aren't the same things. Where things lie hidden, there's a myth waiting to be discovered. Treasure hunters don't only set their eyes on objects with religious meaning, but also on places said to hold great riches. The Song of the Nibelungs is probably the most famous German saga. It tells the story of the legendary treasure of Siegfried, the Dragon Slayer. But where is his gold now? The Rhine, center stage for the tale of the Nibelungs dating back to the late antiquity and the migration period. It's a saga of greed, treason, and murder, and a huge treasure stolen by Siegfried, the Dragon Slayer. Legend has it that the Rhine was once the home to the Burgundian kingdom. There, Siegfried marries Kriemhild, the sister of King Gunther. The king's advisor, Hagen von Tronje, is obsessed with Siegfried's treasure. 40 cartloads of gold and silver, and an invisibility cloak. Hagen turns King Gunther against Siegfried. At the king's behest, he kills the hero and hides the gold in the Rhine. The river has kept the secret ever since. The Hagen monument in Worms is a reminder of the Nibelungs. But without the treasure and the hope to find it, this tale would have likely been forgotten long ago.
Humans are fascinated by treasures partly because of the monetary value, obviously, but the treasures that we see in myth tend to be more than that. They have a magical value to them. They have a personality of themselves. They're a character in the story. So, for example, if we think in the Nibelung of Siegfried's invisibility cloak, and I think we like the idea of there being something in the world that connects us to a realm beyond our own. So it's a magical power.
But how much historical truth is hidden in the ancient writings? St. Gall, Switzerland. There's an important clue here. The Benedictine monastery is home to one of the oldest manuscripts of the Song of the Nibelungs. It dates back to the second half of the 13th century. Joachim Heinzler knows the Nibelung saga better than most. He believes the text is based on true events that took place many centuries before the manuscript was written.
Generally speaking, heroic legends were considered historical, a form of passing on history.
According to the saga, Siegfried's widow Kriemhild seeks revenge after the death of her husband. She turns away from the Burgundians and marries Etzel, king of the Huns. Upon her invitation, King Gunther and his entire entourage travel to the court of the Hun king. They all die in an unparalleled bloodbath. The Burgundians really existed. At the beginning of the migration, the Burgundians established settlements along the Rhine, and the heart of their empire is exactly where the Nibelungen saga is set, Worms. And just as in the saga, the real Burgundians are doomed. In around 435, they are defeated by Roman and Hun troops. King Gunther's character is based on the real Burgundian king Gundahar. And King Etzel has a real counterpart too, Attila, legendary leader of the Huns. Like Etzel, Attila is said to have been married to a Germanic woman.
So the Nibelungenlied mixes reality with fiction. There were real groups of people called the Burgundians, and this is a story about the fall of those great groups of people. We also have the Hun, who are mythologized as being incredibly scary. So the fact that it has this central core of reality means that we can actually believe all aspects of the myth, which makes them more powerful.
If the protagonists of the saga really existed, then the Nibelung treasure could also be real. But where is it hidden?
The Nibelung treasure can definitely exist. Between the 3rd and the 6th centuries, people buried things constantly, particularly precious metals, gold, silver, jewelry, dishes, weapons.
And indeed, silent witnesses of the era occasionally emerge from the Rhine. The last sensational find dates back to 1967, when dredgers came across an incredible treasure in a gravel pit. Heino Neumeier, curator of the Neues Museum Berlin, safeguards the treasure, known as the Hoard of Neupots.
What we have here is really extraordinary, really unique. It's the biggest hoard from Roman times that was ever found north of the Alps.
Richly adorned weapons and vessels, silver, bronze, copper. The value of the raw materials alone is quite impressive. A huge treasure like the one in the Nibelungenlied. The coin finds date it relatively clearly to the year 259, 250 years before the events in the Nibelung saga. It's not Siegfried's gold, but a silver lining nevertheless. The real treasure might still be out there, waiting to be discovered. The possibilities are unlimited, because the course of the river has changed over the centuries. What used to be the bottom of the Rhine is dry land today. Amateur researchers are scouring the woods along the shores of the Rhine with metal detectors, sometimes with great success. In 2014, Benjamin Czerny finds gold and silver jewelry worth more than €1 million. The find of his life.
Of course, we felt a certain adrenaline rush as we found all the individual parts and saw how they shimmered, all silver and golden. It's the best outcome for any treasure hunter.
He films the entire hoard at his home and proudly presents his discovery online.
The most beautiful piece. Unfortunately, the gems are missing. They probably fell out.
The video attracts the attention of the authorities, who then seize the treasure. It ends up in the State Museum of Koblenz. Experts determined that the gold came from the Huns. While it's not the Nibelung treasure, it is proof that the Huns were near the Rhine, at the same time as the Burgundians. Another find that keeps the myth of the Nibelung treasure alive and raises hopes that the Rhine is yet to reveal its greatest secret. Myths often revolve around real historical figures. After all, human history has produced legendary rulers like Attila, the king of the Huns. Feared during his lifetime, he became a myth after his death. Where is the great leader buried? It's the year 453. Although Attila has already suffered his first military defeat, he is still the powerful ruler of an impressive empire. His marriage to Ildiko, a Germanic princess, is supposed to further stabilize Attila's power. But the honeymoon phase doesn't last long. Attila dies the night they were married. Was it an accident or murder? Today, it seems likely that the king died as a result of his excessive drinking. The greatest unsolved mystery: where is his tomb? His dead body is said to be protected by 3 layers of iron, silver, and gold. Allegedly, Attila's followers cut off their hair and scratched their faces to mourn his death with blood instead of tears. But where could he be buried? It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. The Huns were on the move in almost all of Europe. In the West, they entered the stage of history in the 5th century AD. In bloody battles, the warrior horsemen advanced deep into the heart of Europe. Their greatest enemies, the Romans.
We don't know exactly why the Huns started to move. Perhaps it was climate change, perhaps they were searching for new fertile land for their growing numbers of horsemen. But we are certain that when they started to move, they pushed in front of them tens of thousands of people, and they fought those tribes as well, pushing them up against the walls of the Roman Empire.
Attila was probably the most successful Hun leader. He knew how to unite the feuding tribes. Today, we don't even know what he looked like, because there are no written documents. The Huns were an illiterate people. The only reports about them come from their enemies. The former Hun Empire is mainly located in today's Hungary. Remains of the warriors on horseback are scattered all across the country. To really understand the Huns, scientists study their dead. Archaeologist Gabor Wilhelm specializes in excavating antique tombs. Only recently, Wilhelm's team discovered a particularly spectacular object. It is the skull of a warrior who lived at the same period as Attila. He was buried in a Hun ritual.
This tomb is an important find because there are still many unanswered questions on the Huns. Thanks to written tradition, we know a few things about Attila, but finds from this era are rare. Even the smallest artifacts help us to complete this mosaic, this puzzle.
But who is this mysterious Hun warrior? The tomb is unusually exquisite. Golden jewelry, belt buckles, an iron sword. No doubt, this has to be the grave of a powerful man. Unfortunately, it's not Attila. The warrior died young. Attila, however, probably lived until the age of 50. Experts believe that Attila was also buried with precious treasures, gold, silver, and invaluable riches for those who find his tomb. He is said to have been buried under a river in a secret ceremony.
Riverbeds are wonderful locations for preserving historic material. There is no air, and that means that the material can be preserved for centuries. So there's every chance that if we found the right place, then Attila's burial chamber would be preserved just perfectly.
But how could a king be buried under a river? With islands to shorten the dam. A natural barrier would mean the water only needs to be dammed on one side, while the other side serves as a natural drain. Later, a wall can be built on that side too. This way, Attila's men might have been able to dig a grave that could be flooded afterwards. But the Danube has changed its course over the centuries. Where are you supposed to start looking?
We found Roman materials and far older relics along the Danube. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to find memories of the Huns, if not Attila's grave itself.
Not all researchers believe in the underwater theory. They are looking somewhere else. Budapest. This is where the life's work of an unknown author is stored. The Hungarians refer to him as Anonymous. His work is titled The Gesta Hungarorum, the deeds of the Hungarians. The 800-year-old manuscript mentions the city of King Attila. But where is this ancient royal city? Some think it could be the medieval town of Sicambria. Sicambria is believed to be lost, but its ruins might be found in the woods of the Pilish Mountains. Ecologist Imre Lansky has followed the Gesta Hungarorum and is convinced that he's found the remains of the ancient city in this forest.
I'm standing on the wall of Attila's castle. The wall was already here back then.
If he is right, Attila's tomb might also be hidden somewhere among these trees and rocks. Lansky starts drilling into the ground. He hopes to find a cavity hiding the tomb of Attila. An endoscope camera probe slowly makes its way through the soil.
This is a fragmented stone, and the rock is not the same.
But whether Attila was really buried in this forest remains unclear. The same goes for the question as to who Attila really was. A cruel barbarian or a skillful negotiator. The only way to find out is to discover his tomb. But great myths are more than just windows into the past. Some ancient myths have stood the test of time and are echoed in urban legends to this day. The infamous werewolves have become an integral part of today's pop culture. They are the epitome of evil. We have an innate fear of horrible beasts, and we crave danger just as much as we are scared of it. '18th century France, an eerie creature wanders the wood of Gévaudan in the south of the country. It is soon dubbed the Beast of Gévaudan. It targets women and children. The victims have one thing in common: they have claw marks. Bernard Soulier is a writer and an expert in local history. He knows everything about the documents describing the beast.
The beast often attacked people on these paths, like the time they found a 16-year-old girl here in 1765. Her name was Agnès Mouk. The beast decapitated her. They found her dead body and her head, which had been severed from the rest of the body.
Those beheadings are what the experts find most disturbing.
I think there's some resemblance between this animal and a wolf. But there's one major difference, and that's its aggressive behavior.
The beast is said to have killed at least 78 people and beheaded 16 of them. Some of the victims were naked. People start panicking. Could the attacker be a werewolf? A creature half man, half wolf? Werewolves. They are the embodiment of evil. Their transformation begins at full moon. Fur grows all over the body, muscles grow beyond human proportions, fingernails turn into sharp claws, hands become paws. The werewolf has the upright posture and intelligence of a human, but attacks its victims with the force of a predator.
The werewolf is an ideal figure of horror, partly because it reminds us of our animalistic side and the fact that we are only a few steps from reverting to it. But also they are the embodiment of evil.
The way we picture werewolves today has primarily been influenced by horror movies. But the descriptions of shapeshifters are much older. In about 700 BC, Greek poet Hesiod mentions a man-wolf for the first time. Zeus is said to have punished King Lycaon by turning his head into that of a wolf. The Roman author Titus Petronius then adds the full moon as a trigger. Nordic legends like Egil's saga also feature werewolves. The Germanic word ver, signifying man, gives them their name, werewolves. By the early modern period, the concept of werewolves is already widespread. The church also chases so-called werewolves during the witch hunts. The witch hunt is based on a book, Maleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches by Dominican monk Heinrich Kramer. He declares that witches, magicians, and werewolves live right among us.
The church adopted stories of werewolves to try and keep people in line. So, as a man, if you misbehaved, if you made a pact with the devil, then you could become a werewolf. And this was the ultimate sanction to make sure that people stayed in line.
The probably most well-known alleged werewolf comes from Bedburg, close to the German city of Cologne. The man is said to have haunted the region in 1589. Historian Utz Anhalt knows the details of the case inside out.
In diesem Waldgebiet soll Peter Stübbe, der bekannteste Werwolf.
Peter Stübbe, the most famous werewolf in history, is said to have committed his atrocious crimes in this forest. He confessed to killing 16 people, mainly children, and to eating them, hungry for their flesh. He also admitted to having killed and eaten livestock and to committing incest with his own daughter.
Back in his day, Peter Stübbe was seen as the personification of evil. Keeping a low profile, he lives discreetly among his alleged victims for a long time. A vigilante group chases a dangerous wolf terrorizing the region. Before the beast manages to escape, one of the farmers cuts off one of its paws. Afterwards, Stübbe is said to have been missing one of his hands, like the animal that lost its paw. He is arrested and confesses to all his crimes under torture. He admits having received a belt from the devil, allowing him to transform into a wolf. His fate is sealed. A court sentences him to death. A leaflet from London from 1590 tells Stübbe's story like a graphic novel.
They broke his arms and legs, so they could wind them into the spokes. They went on and tore pieces of flesh out of his body with red-hot pliers. They beheaded his mutilated body, and in the end, the entire body was burned.
Und am Ende wurde dieser ganze Körper nochmal verbrannt.
In ancient myths, the lines between dark forces and mythical creatures, fantastic tales and crimes of cruelty often blur. Is it possible that a human being was behind the killings in Gévaudan? The mysterious beast is eventually defeated by one of the locals. His name, Jean Chastel. One single shot and it's done. The bullet pierces the animal's heart. The murders stop, but the story has a dubious hero. It's the miraculous shot that raises doubts. Chastel was about 20 meters away from a moving target and killed the animal with a single shot, a level of precision nearly impossible to achieve with an 18th century weapon. Unless the beast didn't move, maybe because it recognized the hunter. Bernard Soulier has his own theory.
The wolf hunters of the 18th century would catch young wolves and crossbreed them with hounds. They wanted to breed animals for greater endurance, more resilience, more strength. Such a hybrid might not fear people and could even readily attack them.
So the murders might really have been committed by a creature half man, half animal, a hound and its owner. The greatest myths also emerge in places where inexplicable phenomena cause fear in people. Bizarre lights in the sky, ships and airplanes disappearing without trace. Natural events like these are what stories are made of. People have always found the extreme weather and the ruthless sea in the Bermuda Triangle terrifying. But what's behind the secrets of the Devil's Triangle? December 5th, 1945, around noon, 5 US torpedo bombers take off from their base in Florida. It's a routine training flight, targeted bombing and navigating above open water. Halfway there, the squadron leader reports compass problems. The pilots are disoriented, then radio contact breaks off. To this day, all 14 crew members and their aircrafts are missing.
Flight 19 became so famous because it wasn't just one plane, it wasn't just one ship, it was 5 planes. It was an entire squadron, and they were never found.
At the time of their disappearance, the men are in the middle of the infamous Bermuda Triangle. For centuries, the waters between Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Bermuda Islands have been shrouded in mysteries. Over the last 100 years, more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes are said to have vanished here without a trace. The exact numbers are unknown. Time and again, eyewitnesses report bizarre phenomena in the area. Charles Lindbergh, the legendary transatlantic aviator, also had an unusual experience. On February 13, 1928, he takes off to a non-stop flight from Havana, Cuba, to his home, St. Louis, Missouri.
Both compasses malfunctioned over Florida Strait. The liquid compass card rotated without stopping. Could recognize no stars through heavy haze. Liquid compass card kept rotating until the Spirit of St. Louis reached the Florida coast.
So we know that the compass spun around uncontrollably. He wasn't able to navigate by the stars. And when he finally found out where he was 300 miles off course near Bahama Island.
One of the most spectacular cases is the disappearance of the USS Cyclops in 1918, a gigantic US Navy vessel. In their official report, the US Navy concludes there has been no more baffling mystery in the annals of the Navy than the disappearance of the USS Cyclops. No radio messages, no distress signals, no signs of life. How can a ship of that size just vanish into thin air?
Part of the fame to do with the event was also associated with the war, so she was lost during the war, and there was a great deal of fear over what the Germans might be doing with their U-boats. And although the Cyclops was not in waters that should have been fought over, perhaps the Germans were operating U-boats there. So there's a lot of fear associated with the war, which made this myth so powerful.
For the first time, people start talking about the treacherous waters. Rumors linked German saboteurs, supernatural forces, and giant sea monsters to its disappearance. Author Marvin Barash has been investigating the case for years. He's familiar with the myths surrounding this ship. However, he does not believe in a miracle. Rather, he is sure to have found a clue in the documents.
There's this U.S. Weather Bureau chart that indicates that there's a large weather system on the east coast of the United States that could have indeed traveled with this large, low system into the area where the Cyclops was on her way home.
But if the USS Cyclops really was in distress, why didn't she call for help?
I suspect a rogue wave, the type of thing that would not have been anticipated. Without warning, no time to prepare, and I suspect likely at night.
Monster waves develop when several swells of different lengths overlap. Long waves travel faster and can overtake shorter waves. As the wave heights combine, they can reach up to 30 meters. Did the USS Cyclops fall victim to such a monster wave? Could the myth of the Bermuda Triangle have a simple explanation, like unpredictable weather? But what about the compass anomalies reported by Charles Lindbergh and others? The Bermuda Islands are the remnants of an ancient volcano formed more than 30 million years ago. Witnesses of an apocalyptic moment in the history of the planet. Nick Hutchins is exploring the underwater rocks.
If we were standing in this exact spot 33 million years ago, we would be under 3,000 feet of lava. This was a big volcanic island then.
Over millions of years, the volcanic rock is eroded by wind and weather and washed into the sea. Today, a layer of lava sand 150 meters thick covers the ocean floor around the islands. Hutchings believes the volcanic floor could explain some of the phenomena observed in the Bermuda Triangle.
Magnetite is the most magnetic, naturally occurring mineral on Earth. And the magnetite in these heavy minerals here, this is enough to affect a compass. Just this little bit here. And as you can see, as we move the compass over here, it moves. It's not a lot, 3 or 4 degrees, but that'd be enough to cause a disaster. You can imagine what 500 billion tons might do.
According to that, Bermuda is a huge magnet right in the middle of the ocean. A conventional magnetic compass would certainly point in a different direction. This can cause ships and planes to go off course.
The Bermuda Triangle doesn't stand out statistically as much as it stands out in our imaginations. It becomes a place where we project whatever our myth is. If your myth is that everything's explainable, you're projecting that onto the Bermuda Triangle. If your myth is that there are aliens or Atlantis, that also is then going to be what you project onto the Bermuda Triangle.
History's greatest mysteries. For millennia, they have roused our curiosity, intrigued us, or served as a warning. And so they will continue to fascinate us in the future.